Alignment you can hear isn't alignment. It's the end of the conversation. Your team agreed in the meeting. Everyone nodded. No one pushed back. You left thinking you had alignment. You didn't. You had silence. And silence is not the same thing. This is the mistake that doesn't show up until it's expensive. A team that stops disagreeing out loud looks exactly like a team that genuinely agrees. Same body language, same meeting cadence, same sounds good at the end of the call. You cannot tell the difference in the room. You can only tell the difference when execution falls apart and everyone is surprised, except quietly themselves. That gap is what this video is about. Premise. Most leaders treat alignment as an event, something that happens in a meeting, gets confirmed with a nod, and is then carried forward. The meeting ends, the decision is made, the team is aligned. That's the assumption. Reframe. The problem isn't that the assumption is wrong. The problem is that it's half right, and the half that's missing is the half that matters. When people stop voicing disagreement, there are two possible reasons. 1, they genuinely agree. 2, they've decided that disagreeing isn't worth it. And in most organizations, in most meetings, the second reason is far more common than the first. This is the hidden cost of a smooth meeting. Every time someone swallows a concern because the room moved on too fast, or because the leader's preference was already visible, or because they tried once and nothing changed, that silence gets logged. Not consciously, but it accumulates. What looks like a team that's pulling in the same direction is often a team that's learned which direction the leader wants to go and has stopped offering anything else. That's not alignment. That's adaptive silence. And it's more dangerous than open disagreement because you can't address what you can't see. Move. The shift here is in how you read the end of a meeting. Stop treating the absence of objection as confirmation. Start treating it as a question. When a room goes quiet after a decision, that quiet deserves a specific kind of attention, not, "Does anyone have concerns?" which is easy to wave off, but a direct, private conversation with the 2 or 3 people whose silence you noticed, not in the meeting. After, one-on-one. The goal is not to reopen the decision. The goal is to find out what didn't get said and why. Premise. There's a specific moment where false alignment gets manufactured, and most leaders don't notice it because they're the ones manufacturing it. It happens when a leader enters a meeting with a visible preference. Reframe. When you walk in already leaning toward an answer, and people can almost always tell, you have changed the nature of the conversation before it starts. You think you're facilitating a discussion. You're actually presiding over a confirmation. The team is no longer evaluating options. They're reading you. They're calculating whether the cost of disagreeing outweighs the benefit of being heard. For most people, most of the time, it doesn't. So they adjust their position toward yours. They find reasons to support what you already want, and they call it agreement. This is the paradox that makes alignment so hard to build honestly. The more authority you have, the more your presence distorts the input you receive. Your confidence doesn't produce clarity in the room. It produces compliance. And compliance that looks like conviction is the most dangerous kind, because it moves fast and breaks without warning. The second-order problem is what this does over time. A team that learns to mirror your preferences stops developing its own analytical muscle. They get good at reading you. They get worse at thinking independently. And when you're not in the room, when the execution is happening without you, they default to what they think you'd want, rather than what the situation actually requires. Move. The practice that follows from this is uncomfortable but specific. Before any consequential discussion, withhold your position until after the room is spoken, not forever. Just long enough for the first 2 or 3 people to commit to a view before they know yours. This requires you to ask questions that don't reveal your lean. It requires you to sit with ambiguity longer than feels natural. The discomfort you feel in that silence is exactly the space where real input lives. If you close it too fast, you forfeit it. Premise. Even when a team reaches genuine agreement in the moment, that agreement has a shelf life, and most leaders never account for it. Reframe alignment isn't a state you achieve and then maintain. It's a condition that degrades. Circumstances shift. New information arrives. People's private assessments evolve. But the public position stays fixed, because no one has created a reason to revisit it, and because changing your position after the meeting feels like undermining the team or contradicting the leader. So the gap between what people say they believe and what they actually believe widens slowly, invisibly, until execution starts to fracture. This is where most accountability conversations go wrong. A leader sees a team member not driving toward the agreed outcome and reads it as a commitment problem, a motivation problem. Sometimes it is, but often it's a belief problem. The person stopped believing the direction was right somewhere between the meeting and the work and had no mechanism to say so. The accountability conversation addresses the symptom. The belief gap is the disease. What this means is that alignment has to be treated as a living thing, not a closed chapter. The decision doesn't end the conversation, it opens a different one, a slower, ongoing conversation about whether the reasoning still holds, whether the conditions have changed, whether the people executing still believe in what they're executing. Move. The behavioral shift here is to build explicit re-entry points into your operating rhythm, not a standing agenda item called alignment check. That's theater. A real re-entry point is a specific question asked directly to the people closest to the work at a meaningful interval after a decision has been made. Not, "How's it going?" but, "What do you know now that we didn't know when we made this call?" That question does two things. It signals that change thinking is acceptable, and it surfaces the drift before it becomes a derailment. Alignment is not what your team says in the meeting. It's what they think on the drive home. You don't have access to that, not directly. But you can build a culture where the distance between those two things is small enough to matter. That requires you to stop rewarding smooth meetings and start rewarding honest ones. The team that never disagrees with you is not your strongest team. It's your most dangerous one.